All right, so I received an email from someone asking about statements of intent. And I thought it was important enough to warrant its own video instead of just putting it in a mailbag. So let me first read a little bit of this and then we'll take it from there. Great video on self-discipline. Why, thank you. I do have a question about statements of intent. So which is better? I am wealthy or I shall be wealthy? Or I have discipline or I shall have discipline for a statement of intent? All right, so statements of intent are very, very important. If you get the statement of intent wrong, the rest doesn't matter. Intention is everything. This is why it needs its own video here. So he's asking if the statement of intent, I am wealthy or I shall be wealthy, is better. Never make your statement of intent off into the future, because it will stay off into the future. The future never comes. It's always the present moment at any given time. So I shall be wealthy is not a very good statement of intent because it's future-based. I am wealthy is better, but it's still not a very good statement of intent because it's far too generalized. I mean, sure, it's simple, and the subconscious does like simplicity. But when you're not specific enough, you run a greater risk of what I like to call subconscious sabotage. So let's take his statement of intent, I am wealthy, for example. Wealthy compared to what? Because for somebody who's in extreme poverty, homeless, or in the third world, you may already be considered wealthy. And so nothing happens. The subconscious is like, well, you're already wealthy, so I don't have to do anything. So you need to be more specific with your parameters. Now, that may not be straight up sabotage, but you gave the subconscious an out. So I'll give another example that's a little bit more saboteur in nature. So let's say you wanted to do an operation and made a statement of intent to score tickets to a show or concert that may be more difficult to get tickets for. So your statement of intent is, I get tickets to blank artist show. Fill in the blank, whoever it may be, who's big these days. Post Malone, I don't know. So you get the tickets, and then the artist cancels the show. You didn't specify which show. You specified the artist, but not which show, which date. You didn't put a time limit on it. We'll go over that in a minute. And even if you did all of that, sometimes the subconscious will just outright sabotage you. Oh, you cast for a date with that girl who works at the coffee shop? Oh, well, guess what? She don't work there anymore. So technically, it can't give you what you're asking for. It's created an out for itself. So when crafting statements of intent, you want to be specific enough to dial it in what you really want while binding down the action not wanted, which we've gone over blessing all involved or not causing harm as the default example. But it's not always causing harm that you need to be concerned with. You also need to craft your statement of intent in such a way to prevent the subconscious from creating an out for itself as much as possible. So back to the statement of intent example, I am wealthy. Instead of I am wealthy, it would be better to have something like I earn X amount by the end of the year 2019, where X equals double what you're earning now. You want to keep it within the realm of possibility, yet somewhat unlikely. So that when it does happen, you're like, okay, well, yeah, Magick certainly helped me with this. People have a tendency to put far too many constraints in their statements of intent or far too little. So it's very important to become adept at dialing in what it is you exactly want in your statement of intent while preventing the subconscious from finding an out or outright sabotaging you. And you run a higher risk of being subconsciously sabotaged if you're too general or vague, you don't do a divination beforehand to find out how it's going to go, or you're casting for something that you shouldn't be casting for. Oh, I want $1 million and I want it next week. If you're casting out of the realm of possibility, it's going to look for an out. Now, I like using time constraints and limits in statements of intent, but if you're going to use them, you need to give yourself a decent amount of time. Don't make it next week or even next month. Many magical operations take 3 months. How long would you need to double your income? Give it a good year. So you got to give it time. In addition to not wanting to be too general or vague with your statement of intent, you also want to avoid putting all your smaller magical goals into one overarching statement of intent. So back to the I am wealthy example, well, what do you need that wealth for? What is it that you're planning on doing with it? It's far better to break that overarching goal down into smaller steps and multiple operations than it is just one huge step that's hard to take, trying to incorporate everything into one operation all at once, which is going to make it more difficult to achieve. So I hope this answers a lot of the questions and helps anyone who may be stuck on this. And I'm sure many people are stuck on this. The statement of intent is very important. Without crafting it correctly, you're not going to find the magical success that you want. And then people say, well, see, magic doesn't work. I cast to be wealthy and I'm not wealthy. And yet, compared to other people, they were. And so the subconscious had an out. So I think a lot more people are going to be successful going forward, knowing how to craft statements of intent correctly. This is Frater Xavier. I want to thank you for listening. Like and share this video if you enjoyed it. Follow me on Twitter at Frater Xavier. And consider joining us over at Patreon, where we'll now have Patreon exclusive videos from time to time. And I'll see you soon. Take care.